Brahmachari Dhyan. And it's a great joy to be here with everybody to share this opportunity. And before I begin, I just want to share a little experience. As I was considering what it takes to speak publicly or relate to others, I started to kind of go down the list of a little bit of the requirements or the essentials. And of course we need our material down pat, and we need to have a good flow and coherency within that material. But it dawned on me how we convey that material, how we relate with our voice to others. The quality of our voice is essential. So I want to talk on the importance of using our voice as a channel for inspiration, as really a transference of our inner attunement and our consciousness. Let me begin by a quote by Swami Ananda from The Art and Science of Raja Yoga. Sound has power. Sound, through the medium of the voice, is a channel through which human consciousness flows in the outward manifestation. It is the connecting link between the mind and feelings of one person and those of another. All things not only respond to sound, they are sound. Now, that's pretty deep and something to really process. And I had a little experience just a little bit ago processing this really key element to how to help others uplift their consciousness. I was partaking in the meditation teacher training here at the Expanding Light, and we learned very quickly that we cannot just sit up there as we're leading somebody in meditation or sharing the teachings. We can't just sit there and just spit off at the top of our head, just philosophy. We need to come from a place of inner attunement, of vibration. And so, as Diksha McCord, she was explaining to us the teachings and the process of leading somebody in the meditation techniques, which we all know. But she really emphasized over and over again, it's about the consciousness behind your words that's going to touch somebody. And that really dawned on me, because here we are, we're leading somebody in sadhana. If you have this really abrasive voice, okay, now sit up straight. You're like, whoa, it kind of shocks you out of your calm inner state. You want to come with a place that enhances one's inner experience. And as public speakers or ministers or counselors or really just devotees on this path, we've been, in a way, ordained cosmically to share the vibration of the masters, not only talk about the vibration, that to make it a living reality for everybody we come in contact with. And the voice is a perfect medium of that, because it is like a crystal, and it reflects the light of our consciousness, either clearly or dimly. And so if our feelings are agitated with negative emotions or anger or anything else, obviously what we have to share others is quite limited. And that light we have, that we reveal to the world is quite dim. And so our job as devotees, not only in our sadhana practice or in our outer service, but really view the voice, as another expression of that service. And as devotees, everything we do should be a service, right? I mean, there is no day off for a devotee. I mean, you think Sunday morning's a day off? No, you got to get up and do the exact same thing you've been doing and try to go deeper. So the voice, it really struck me, because we live in such a beautiful community, Ananda, and people have their different expressions, and yet most of them have this sweetness in their voice. And Swami had that sweetness. Master had that sweetness. And I started to really think about this, and I realized as our service, let's say if our outer service, whether it's the web services or whether it's property services or whether it's teaching, anything we do outwardly, over time, the more we go within and deepen our own spiritual practices, the more that we do outwardly becomes infused by that inner vibration. Okay, so God has 8 aspects, right? God has these certain qualities that we tap in meditation. And the more deeply we tap into those qualities, the more easily we express these things in our daily life. So I was thinking about the voice and how at different times Swamiji and Master, they express these different qualities because they're so deeply in tune with the divine, right? And so they're up there, they're giving their talks, and they're electrifying the audience to wake up, you're children of God. And the ferocious thunder of Master's voice, you hear him in the talks, and you're just like, yes, divine potential, let's do it, let's get busy, And Swami is just, different, obviously there's different times for different aspects that come out, but I had this experience a little bit ago. I I volunteer for Treasures Along the Path, digitizing old Swami's tapes. So I go down in the studio and take these really old tapes and put them into media files to preserve, this wisdom. And there's this one particular talk that really struck a chord with me because, Swami's always calm. I mean, I never heard him agitated. He's always he's always emitting so much peace. But this particular talk, it was at like an Albuquerque Center or something, way about, it was just such a depth of calmness. And I was sitting there, and it didn't matter what he was saying. I was being melted by his words and the vibration. I was just like, it was amazing how you can just close your eyes, forget you're even there physically, and his vibration through his voice is just elevating your consciousness. And that really touched me because it's like we all have that potential. And here we are at with an opportunity to develop and hone that skill through Joymasters. It's something to really, for myself, that I need to take to heart because every moment, we talk so often, right? We talk so often. We go down to the market. We go to the mall. I don't go to the mall, but some people go to the mall. But, we go places and we meet people and we talk to people. And it's like, in the world, how often are people just talking for the sake of talking? Just to hear themselves chatter. And personally, I feel like that's a waste of time, but I used to do it and I probably still do some. But it's like here, we have such a divine opportunity to spiritualize everything. And I feel like the voice is something so powerfully linked to our human experience that every day we have that chance to transfer those states that we touch in meditation. So it's a beautiful opportunity, and I see Kalidas, and I have to share this story because it was really sweet for me. One day I called Kalidas, and he wasn't home, so it was his voice message, his personal answer machine. And so I was calling about Joymasters, and he started talking. He's like, "Hello, friends," and he just started going on with his characteristic sweetness. And I'm just like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." And that experience with Swami, it almost like I forgot what I called him for, and the only thing that I could think was, "I love you too, bro." It was amazing, because that's what he was conveying on his line. It's like, magnetism. What we offer the world, we get back. But more importantly, what we offer as devotees should be a channel for upliftment in every avenue. So the voice is beautiful in that respect because, like I said, we talk so often, and these little things, it's just the tonality of our voice. We're feeling a little calm, we express that calmness, and all of a sudden the people we relate to, they feel calm and at ease. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. Okay. So, one quick quote, Jesus said, "Out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh." Now, that's beautiful. I actually just found that out last night by Krishna Das, but nonetheless, it's relevant. And I feel like that's really the place I personally, and I invite everybody else to, but coming from a place of sincere attunement and depth to those inner qualities, and to share those verbally. And when the heart is full, the mouth should speak it, the beauty of the heart, and not some contrived intellectuality, if that's even a word. But really coming from a place of sincere yearning to help others. So I invite everybody here, the speakers and alike, to really tap into that attunement and share that with us. I'm sure you already will, and you're already planning to. But nonetheless, it's a beautiful opportunity that we have. And I just want to close with the reading that Swami wrote in Living Wisely, Living Well. Project outward through your own voice tones of kindness, good humor, and generosity. Project devotion to God above all. The more you focus on letting these qualities vibrate through your voice, the more you will find them deepening within you. So, God bless you all. Thank you. And,
Well, thank you all. It's really a joy to be here with you, even if it's for a brief time while baby is getting ready for bedtime. What I wanted to share with everybody tonight a little bit was about cultivating Divine Mother's love, because it seemed very appropriate. I'm now an expert. 6 weeks today. I have been a mother. But really, when I was thinking about it and meditating on it a little bit, which is a story in itself, sadhana has shifted a little bit, and the way that you get to do that has shifted. But in thinking about it, the journey of cultivating Divine Mother's love to then become a mother really did begin. It begins in everybody's life at birth in your own way, but for me, with this particular experience, it began with pregnancy, not just with the birth of my sweet little one. Because, in the process, you start to sort of blossom, and people said it to me. People saw it in what was happening in my outer form, but a lot of that was happening on the inside. What I found, which was really fascinating to me in my sadhana, was a real shift towards chanting. And Master says that opens the heart, and that chanting's half the battle. And opening the heart is so important in terms of Divine Mother's love. So I found, a huge increase in my chanting, in my sadhanas. And as the baby, now has arrived, that has shifted into chanting to her when she needs to go to bed, and she won't. So I get hours of chanting every single day, and my heart is just blossoming and continuing to grow. And then, of course, there's the idea of nurturing. Divine Mother is nurturing, and that beautiful quality is, again, begins with pregnancy. You're feeding the baby, and everything that you're taking in the process is affecting the baby, and it's nurturing or it's not. And so you really find yourself drawn towards the nurturing. I had a really funny experience that showed that in the opposite, where I went to see Superman, the movie. And I have never been beaten up so badly on the inside. She kicked and she punched and she just didn't like it at all. And there is nothing about that movie that's nurturing. I highly don't recommend it. Especially pregnant, but in general, if you're wanting to cultivate Divine Mother qualities, that's not the place to do it, or not the way to do it. So it was really sort of interesting to me. But now, it's feeding. She needs to eat all the time, and she's growing so fast. And in that process, you just realize, or you feel in your heart and in your whole body, this nurturing quality. It's a beautiful experience for mothers, but really, I know we can find this in other ways in our lives. There are so many things that we all do that nurture each other, whether it's helping somebody or feeding somebody. The whole community has nurtured us in showing up with meals and supporting us, and you just feel surrounded and enveloped in this process, and it's really beautiful. Another quality, which of course is very major, is the unconditional quality of Divine Mother's love, and that I think that we all really strive as yogis to develop unconditional love. So it's not news to anybody, but in the process of parenting and learning to love a soul who's arrived in your home, who you don't know anything about, it's really very strong and very much present in your face what this means to love unconditionally. This little being could be absolutely polar opposite to Badri and I, and we get to learn in the process how to have none of that affect that love that you feel for that person. And it's a real opportunity, because so many parents really want what they think is best for their child. And of course, as very devout yogis, we have ideas about what that is. But it's going to mean whatever it means for her, and it's going to be a lifelong process of letting go of what we think that looks like, and letting her develop what it is for her, while still supporting her growth in the ways that we have found do work for us, knowing that that's what it is and she needs to make it her own. I had the very great fortune of growing up in Ananda village with two yogi parents, and I watched them do this with me. You know, they really made some good choices along the way of, you know, not making me go to Sunday service when I didn't want to go. And not really, you know, forcing, but always showing through example what this path means and what it means to them, and then letting me come to it if I was going to. And really, I have 2 siblings, and neither one of them went to this particular path in their lives. But they benefited from the teachings, and they've integrated what works for them into their lives. And that's what I get the opportunity to learn to hope for my little person, that she integrates whatever is valuable and useful for her in the way that works for her, and without attachment to what that looks like. And that's that unconditional nature. You see it I saw it in Swami growing up here too. You know, he was like a sort of a grandfather figure to me all my life, and he exudes that unconditional love. He would show me that he loved and cared for me and for my other siblings, without saying, you know, without pushing, well, are they involved, or what are they doing, and are they participating in Ananda? It was more, you know, hey, how are you? What are you up to? You know, really interested in where I am at this moment, and not interested necessarily in forcing what he would want for me. And I think that was also a part of how I found my way to this path. From being right born in it, I needed to go through a journey to get there. And I really hope I get to create that. But that unconditional nature of love is critical to that, and cultivating that for that little person to be able to go on her journey and come back if that's what she wants, or not if that's what she wants. I have a lot of examples sort of rolling through my head of how Swami showed that specifically. In college, this one struck me. In college, I was studying in Italy, and I went to the Assisi Center for one long weekend, and I loved it. It was awesome. It wasn't my first time, but it was my first time as an adult going to the Assisi Center, and Swami was living there at the time. So I said to my parents who were there that weekend, I think I want to quit college and I want to stay here. This is amazing. I don't want to go anywhere. And Swami said to my parents, he didn't say it directly to me at the time, but he said to my parents, you know, I think it's important that you finish her education. And boy, was it important that I finished my education. But right there was an opportunity where he could have said, yeah, she wants to be on this path, forget that, come, do this. But he was right. I wasn't ready to give all the rest of my educational journey and the rest of the journey that I needed to go to really be ready for these teachings. He knew, and so he gave all, you know, the different advice than you would think, or the opposite advice that you would think, and it was the best. Now, having gone through that, just to say it, I get to use, what I do is I do fundraising, and Ananda has a lot of great projects that are, you know, need money. So I have a skill that now I can use to help people in the projects that we all want to create. So he was thinking. So, oh, she's going to come back with something useful. Maybe he knew. But anyway, I'm just really so grateful to have the opportunity as a new mother to cultivate those qualities of Divine Mother, you know, the unconditional, the personal and the impersonal, which is also really important in that unconditional love. You get to love that person, but then you need to step back and see the person for the soul that they are in a much bigger picture. That's more the father quality, I guess, technically, but it's necessary to develop that unconditional nature. And nurturing, wow, am I busy doing that now? In fact, I'm going to wrap this up because it's time. So thank you.
Hello. I'm going to talk about intuition and attunement. I was just recently listening to one of the talks, one of Master's talks, where he tells the story of how he got this intuitive guidance to leave India and go to America. And that was quite an amazing story, because when you read it in the autobiography, he doesn't give quite as many details as he does in that talk. But what strikes me is, first of all, the fact that he had that vision at around noon, and by 3 o'clock that afternoon, he was on a train going to Calcutta, getting ready to leave. I mean, and he was it's not like today, you take a plane and go to America from India. That was quite a big thing that he was going to do. And not only that, he had no idea what money he would have to go. He didn't have a passport, nothing. Everything that every person rationally would, get ready to do for a trip like that. And yet he knew he was going. And in the talk is actually quite funny how he describes going to the office where he wanted to reserve this cabin on the first city of Sparta, the first steamer leaving for America after the war, and how this guy said, "Where's my room?" And he was like, "Well, just put my name down. If something comes available, just put my name and this will be mine." Well, there's no way anybody's going to cancel. Yeah, well, just put my name down. But you don't have a passport. Don't worry about that. You just put my name. And so he went, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but he was able to get a passport in a very short time, which was very unusual, especially at that time, right after the war again. And how he then came back to this guy, and the first time he went, a friend was with him. And the second time, the friend said, "I'm not going to go in there with you again, because you're gonna fight with that guy again." He said, "I wasn't fighting. I was just asserting myself." But anyway, and then all of a sudden, everything falls into place, and he's got his ticket, he's got his passport, and off he goes. And I was just thinking how, for all of us, in a sense, I think we're all here because at some point in our lives, we felt that what we were doing or the way our lives looked like was not quite answering our questions, was not going to give us, we felt that it wasn't going to give us whatever our heart wanted. And I don't know about you, but even now, my dad has no clue why I decided to leave a beautiful apartment, good job, family, and to just go to California, to this place where I'm here, I don't even have a salary. And, so, and it's like, he doesn't know that. I didn't tell him, I never will. But we all know that there is something greater that our souls are called to do. And that comes from our intuitive guidance. It's there now, but it's been there for a long time. And Master put it there because we've all been with Master before. And when the time was ripe, Master just had to, put out these waves again towards us, and boom, we felt it. It's, sorry, I gotta go. This is my calling for this lifetime. And this is the way God operates. We usually look at, people out there look at their future and they have dreams that they're pursuing, but our dream as devotees our dream is not a dream that leads to another dream. It's not the American dream. Our dream is something that will allow us to stop dreaming altogether and to finally wake up. It reminds me of a story that I heard about our dear Seva here at the village. That many years ago, she was here, and there was another woman who they were having a conversation about something, and this other woman was obviously wrong, but she was convinced she was right, and so she was trying to overpower Seva with talking, and Seva finally just stopped talking and said, "Okay, sounds good to me." And then she left. And then somebody who had heard the conversation went up to Seva and said, why did you let her just, she now thinks she's right, but she's totally wrong. And Seva said, you know what? I didn't come here to be right. I came here to be free. And I thought that was quite an amazing answer to give, because she recognized the reality of what she was here to do. She wasn't here to run after yet another dream. She was done with dreams. She is done with dreams. And you look at her, she is done with dreams. And this kind of intuition is on an intellectual level, oftentimes absolutely doesn't make any sense. But we know it's what we have to follow. I don't know if you've had the experience. I had this quite a bit lately because I'm working on different projects that are quite creative, so I get to sit down and just try to tune into what Master wants me to do. And all of a sudden I get an idea and boom, I start working. And it feels really good. And then if I stop and think too much about it, I realize that, what would people think if I say that? Well, and all these doubts start to creep up, and it's like, I don't want to listen to that. And it's been a very interesting exercise to just, no, I don't want to listen to you, to just make a choice of what kind of energy we decide to follow. Do we follow our intuitive feeling, or do we follow what the ego is trying to tell us? There's an interesting story that I read about Yogananda when he was in India, when he went back in 1935. One of his sisters, I can't remember which one, had strep throat, and it was a big inflammation. It was very inflamed and very, what's the word?
Swollen.
Yeah, it was swollen, and anyway, it was really bad, and she had fever and all that. And she went up to Master and asked him if he would heal her. And he said, sure, and he put his hand on her throat, and the pain disappeared, and the swelling disappeared, and she was fine. So she went home, and then she got curious. And so she opened up her mouth, and she looked in the mirror, and she saw that the inflammation and all the pus, everything was still all there. And she got scared, and a few minutes later, the pain was there again, the swelling was there again. And then she went back to Master, and Master said, okay, I'm gonna heal you again, but don't look, just let it be, it'll go away. And sure enough, after a few days, it was all gone. But our minds are following a different dream. We think that doesn't make any sense, how could he do that? And so there she goes, looks in the mirror, and oh, it's still there. Anyway, so I was just thinking how all that we do on the spiritual path, on an intuitive level, but most especially when we try to tune into Master, when we try to make God and Master our primary thought, our primary reality, all of a sudden this intuition starts to develop more, and we're able to tune out those other thoughts that are like static on our consciousness, and we're able to more clearly feel what it is that Master wants us to do. And whenever we can do that, we automatically gradually decrease the power that this other dream, which is Maya, which is the ego, that this other dream has on us. And it's really fascinating working for such an extended period of time, which I've never done before, on creating things, creating something new. It's fascinating how as soon as I allow my mind to be dragged down by anything, and I'm not in tune with that thought of wanting to receive Master's guidance, all of a sudden I feel dry. There's just nothing left there. And I try and nothing comes. But at the same time, it's not just that. At the same time, I feel so much joy all the time. And so what an interesting discovery. But the more we can stay there, just stay there, and never allow our minds and our hearts to be pulled down by things. Just stay there. Not only everything we do will flow smoothly, but our lives will be so much more joyful. And if I understand it right, this is pretty much what we're all here for, right? And so, anyway, this is my little wish for myself and all of you, that we can all live always in this flow of intuition and attunement.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank you all for being here to support us and cheer us on as we practice in this way. So my topic tonight is on how to overcome fear and have courage. As I was thinking about a talk that Jyotish and Devi gave similar on this topic months ago, the words that stuck out, I remember Devi saying, how to overcome courage is, and I was like, how to overcome fear and have more courage is meditation. And I knew this to be true by my own experience, but I really was surprised to see how true that very thing was, because for so long I sought courage through doing brave things. Like, I'm going to go such and such by myself on my own and radiate this. But really, where I found the most courage was in stillness. And so why is this? Well, I think it's because when we come in tune with who we really are, which is every atom of existence, which is ever conscious, ever new bliss, then there's nothing left to fear. It's all as it should be. We're one, we're whole, we're free. And so, controlling the little pranayam, you won't have to fear anything anymore. So, so how do we dive into that place and then radiate that out through our lives? We get in tune with that source of who we truly are, and through eons, different religions and teachers have been saying this, and it's really interesting how, even something like AA, or something that connects to people all over the world, their one principle for being a part of that program is you have to connect with God in some way. On our own, of course it's going to be freaky. What is this world? Everything changes, everything passes, everything is fleeting, but God is constant. God is never changing. And so when we tune into that thing that's greater than the ego, the mind, any of that, then we are ever supported. So tuning into that higher power. I had a fun experience, more than fun, a very deeply inspiring experience with this, with Swamiji. I was 16, and we were traveling through Europe with the tours, singing Christ's Oratorio. And I loved to sing, but when I was younger, and I did take voice lessons, every time I would stand up to sing, I would just get so freaked out that the song was ruined. So I went through my life sort of singing to my friends and my family, but not, in our little Ananda church, but it wasn't something I did in front of large groups of people. And then Duty and Jeannie were the sopranos on our trip, and they'd been singing for weeks now throughout Italy on these tours, and they'd get up there and they'd hit those high notes, and finally their voices were gone and they were sick. So I remember Duty saying to Agni, I just heard Rose singing that song. I think Rose can sing that song. And I'm like, Duty, I've never sung that song. And he goes, okay, well, we'd like you to sing that song. I go, well, let me see. And it's starting in 20 minutes, and we're singing in this big church. I was 16 years old, and I did know the song. I had sung the song on my own, but, So I go, well, I guess this is mine to do. But Swami's here. Swami's in the front row. And if I mess up his song, he's really going to notice. And then he can probably probably even read my mind right now, and he's probably going to think, oh my God, oh my God. So I was going here, walking up the steps to sing. And I tuned into Swami because I was kind of freaked out. And what I received was, if I truly am who you feel I am, then if you mess up, I will love you more. If you are scared, I will send you support. And that's what I felt, just this wave of support. And I wasn't afraid anymore. And also the thought came, everyone else in this audience truly is that Divine Mother, truly is Divine Mother. That's who they really are. So they all are supporting you too. So it became this like love circle. And it was just a very deep blessing. And that came from someone who was channeling Divine Mother. So that higher power, we can do anything with that higher power. So Master says to gain any quality, but Master says to gain more courage in your life, meditate on courage. And in school, I taught for many years the feeling years. The kids are used to being in a body, and now they're feeling. So we're working on that level. And what we did a lot of, how I taught a lot of spiritual things were through stories of brave deeds. And the kids get really into that, you know. They can really relate to someone going out there and trusting and conquering, as can we all. We all love a good epic. And Lord of the Rings, I mean, how many years has that been, you know, a story that deeply inspires so many people, because it's about that courage. And so tuning into those stories and being around those storylines in our minds, and being around those of us who we know who emanate that strength and courage. Because face it, this is the Battle of Kurukshetra, and we're all warriors, and this is it. And we gotta put on our armor and do it with Master doing it through us, and help each other to do that in everything that we undertake. So spiritual support and positive storylines. I loved it also years back. Irene Schulman was a great heroic teacher for me. And I remember it was scary for me to come here way back when I did. These are all old stories, but when I was about 13, I moved here without my family. I wanted to live here and live at the boarding school, but it was really hard for me because I really missed home. So I don't know, I can't move here, I can't be here, I don't know. She's like, okay, visualize the worst thing that can happen. And now, can you deal with that? Okay, the worst thing that can happen is I miss home and it's a little, yeah, I can deal with that. So I think whenever things come that are challenges, okay, visualize the worst that can happen and visualize doing it. And then the worst has already happened and you did it. So one step at a time that way. For many years I did theater, and it was really interesting for me to see how the body, mind, and emotions are so connected. I think I'm preaching to the choir with our yoga instructors here, but once I had to play the part of, we had an all-women's cast playing a Shakespeare play, so I had to play the part of a man. And I had to throw my shoulders back and radiate my energy and step my feet apart, and it's like, whoa, our bodies really influence how we think. And so I thought we'd just try that together now for a minute. It gives us a chance to move. So let's start, thank you. Let's start by slouching, closing off our hearts, feeling overburdened by all things. Okay, really, how does this posture make you feel?
Uncomfortable.
All right, now throw your shoulders back. Everyone stand up for a moment. Stand tall, feet apart, shoulders back, chin parallel to the floor, and take a deep breath. And just that simple change in your body, how does that dramatically affect our mind, heart, and soul? And having a seat, I wanted to end with one of my favorite things Master ever wrote. I have it on my wall. I go to it frequently. You must never lose courage. Divine Mother sent me to pilot you out of the clouds of your mind. Everybody's difficulty is different, and he or she has to win that test of karma. Overcome all by constant inward calling on God and utmost devotion in words, thought, action, and obedience to Guru. Your troubles I do not mind. I will never give up my job about you. It is better to conquer one evil and not live with it forever. Never for a moment identify yourself with momentary flashes of error. Have no fear, even though I am gone from your visible eyes. You will never be alone. I may not scold you then, but I shall ever be with you, and through Divine Mother guard you from all harm, and will constantly whisper to you guidance through your loving self. So do not become discouraged and tired, but ever be interested in working for Divine Mother, no matter if war, sickness, death dance around you. That is the secret of victory over delusion and all troubles. Be cut to pieces, but never give up. Be like the divine leech. Suck at the blood of wisdom, even though torn to bits. A smooth life is not a victorious life, and I will give you lots of my good karma, so you will get through. I will not only ever forgive you, but ever lift you up, no matter how many times you fall. Keep unceasingly trying to conquer. Not only will I invisibly help you, but visibly through many here. I am not building a mansion for you or giving you riches which will perish, but I am making an imperishable home with all riches in Divine Mother's mansion. God bless you on your journey.
Thank you, Rose. That's beautiful. What a just beautiful, diverse group we have. I think it's so fun just to see people at so many different walks of life and so many different experiences, and all just sharing that same joy that comes forward. I don't know if everybody had the chance to see Ananda, Italy's Joymasters satsang that they did, but it was very inspiring, not only just to see the young people kind of stepping up and starting to give talks, but also just to see the people that I haven't met before and conveying the same spirit, the same joy. It's just a really deep blessing to feel connected on such a global level, and that we're all tuning into Master and sharing this vibration. So I wanted to talk tonight about humility and the spiritual quality of humility. It's something that has kind of surfacing itself in my life more and more over the last few months. It's always been on my radar as a very deep and important component of the spiritual path. But I think it's being such a deep and subtle lesson and quality, it takes years of just tuning into it to really cultivate it and understand its depth. I was recently reading Swamiji's Sadhu Beware, where he outlines different pitfalls on the spiritual path and certain qualities to cultivate. And I thought it was very poignant that the first two chapters that he outlined were next to kind of talking about Ananda Sangha, was the first one, humility and what it is, and the second one is how to develop and cultivate humility. And to me, it really kind of captured this natural attunement that I was going through right now of really wanting to dive into and really look at what true humility is and how it manifests. In that book, he defines humility. True humility is self-forgetfulness, leading to self-transcendence. And ultimately, what that brought to me into my mind is that humility can take you all the way. I mean, and self-transcendence, he says, ultimately is self-realization. And so starting with something so simple, and I think so easily overlooked, at least is what I experienced in my own life, is, oh yes, I know I need humility. And it's kind of one of the first things we learn is that, okay, God is the doer. God is the doer of these actions, of whatever is trying to manifest through me, God is the doer. Okay, I can repeat that, I can affirm that, that is what I'm going for. But it's so much more to actually embody that. And I think it's like anything, it's kind of this vast idea. It's similar to self-realization. Okay, in theory, yes, that is what we are going for. But on a day-to-day practical reality, what does that look like? How does that manifest within my being? And for me, these last few months has really been kind of the the integration and the exploration of that. And I think it's so unique in that it's very counterculture to the modern American dream. When growing up in the world, we're taught the exact opposite. It's ego identification. It's how can I get ahead? It's I, me, mine. And that's completely opposite than humility, true transcendental humility. So I think coming to the spiritual path, it's not something that people resonate with immediately because it's very different than the world that at least I had been brought up in. And so it's kind of figuring it out, okay, how does that look and how does that manifest? And for me, I think the deepest teacher of humility is the Ananda members, especially the members who have been here for so long, because it's so tangibly evident within their personalities and their beings. And it's very subtle. It's not easy to see, and it's not easy to attune to unless you begin to have an experience of your own. I think, like anything, we don't begin to recognize something and its value until we participate in one way or another. And I think, like builders, you build a home, and you really get the idea of what it took to build this home. You see, okay, we had to lay a foundation, we had to build these walls, we had to put on, the trusses and the roof and the shingling. But for most people, they walk into a house and say, oh, nice house, it's great. They don't recognize the energy, the commitment, the dedication to learning those skills that it took to craft this home. And I think has been kind of my spiritual exploration with humility is, just walking into Ananda, it's like, oh, these are nice people, they're really kind, they're really sweet. But until we begin to take that inward journey on our own, do we recognize the depth of what these individuals have been cultivating for all these years. And for me, humility has really been one that's been profound, and also, like any one of our tools and these spiritual qualities, can really take us as far as we're willing to dive into them, investigate into them, and really commit to them. And I think, any organization is really not judged, but anything in general is really the product of its fruits. I mean, what it puts out it's kind of judged by those fruits. And I think for Ananda, the fruits of Ananda are its members. And just seeing the quality of the members that we have really, for me, has consistently and continually recognized the depth that this path has to offer. Master, when somebody was commenting on his humility, he said, how can there be humility when there is no consciousness of ego? And I think really this is kind of the direction that we're going for. And it's a very difficult thing. I mean, even, when you have the recognition of, okay, God is the doer, it's so easy to get, somebody's giving you praise, how easy is it to say, okay, God is the doer. But it really reminds me of the story of the priest who was doing incantation and a demon kept visiting him. And so he did an incantation into powder and spread it over the demon. And he said, before you even could do that incantation, I myself was manifest within it. And it's very similar with the process of a lot of these qualities. They're so subtle. And the ego is so subtle that, when somebody praises me, okay, God is the doer. But immediately when I say that, I recognize that the ego has already wormed its way through into that. And so how do you cultivate it with this subtle ego and I think it's a beautiful example of what the saints have exemplified for us. And one such saint is Saint Francis, where he always would refer to himself as Brother Donkey. And I think what it did was create a certain amount of separation between the ego, the body, and the consciousness that we're trying to tune into through meditation and through harboring these spiritual qualities. It reminds me of the story of the two wolves, which I'm sure we've all heard many times, but just the synopsis of it is a young boy comes to his grandfather saying, there's this war going on between me. And his grandfather recognizes that, yes, this is the war of duality, and this war is between two wolves, one of light, of goodness, of kindness, and the other is of darkness, of evil, greed, of suffering. And they're battling within you, and the young boy says, well, which one will win? And the grandfather says, whichever one you feed. And it's so the subtlety of the spiritual path And it really comes down to, on a day-to-day basis, which of those two realities are we feeding? Are we feeding the one that's identified with this body, that's identified as Indra, who does this, who lives this way, who has these friends and this reality? Or does it identify with that consciousness that comes through meditation and through really tuning in and looking at our ability to serve? And so constantly, it's so subtle, but really it comes down to that. How are we directing our energy, and what wolf are we continuously feeding?
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, my name is Sanjan, and this evening I just wanted to share with you about Swami Kriyananda, who's had a big, profound impact on my spiritual path, on all of our spiritual path. And I just wanted to begin by sharing a little bit about myself after I start with this quote that I often share with people that are learning meditation, and it means something very deeply to me. So it's from the essence of self-realization. To the disciples, Yogananda often said, "Be patient in your yoga practice. A plant won't grow the moment you plant the seed. Make haste slowly," as the saying goes. It may take time to achieve the results you long for, but the more you practice, the more you will see your life changing. The day will dawn at last when you won't even recognize yourself as the person you were. And that means something very much to me, just how I've grown from a child to where I am now. And Gita was sharing this evening about her hopes and with baby Tulsi. And I have to say I was one of those nightmare children that she's hoping not to have. So I was someone that, I don't remember much of my first 5 years. I was told that I cried an incredible amount. I was filled with an incredible amount of energy that was just all over the place and uncontrollable, and my mum does not look fondly back at the time when I was growing up at all. And as a young boy, really after about 6 or 7, my parents would go to bed. Well, I would go to bed, and then I'd kind of just pace around. They'd go to bed, I'd pretend I was asleep, and I'd get up, and I'd pace around, and I'd really be very reflective about my whole life. I was thinking and always kind of just pacing, and just it's a very bizarre kind of thing. And I did that for many, many years. And as a teenager, so I'm just really giving you a feeling of who I was. And as a teenager, I was part of the drama society. However, I was just totally afraid to speak my emotions, who I was, to really say anything. And I remember them directly asking me at one point, Justin, which was my previous name, what do you feel? And I couldn't even express what I felt. I just was totally, completely and utterly silent. And I ended up leaving the drama club. But I was very determined to overcome the challenges that I had within myself. And I was someone that was just, over the years that I kind of grew up, I felt I had lots of negative thoughts. My environment was not necessarily, I had loving parents, and but I just found that I had a very low self-image, low self-esteem. I felt very strongly negatively about myself. And I was determined just to be happy. I remember once being in bed and just kind of, even though I wasn't religious, just praying very deeply that I would do whatever it takes to be happy. And no matter what that is, even if it means wearing pink Wellington boots and standing in the middle of Trafalgar Square, I would definitely, if that's what really made me happy, that's what I would do. And it was a very sincere prayer. And I then went on this journey and I started to explore different ways of psychology, and I joined something called Landmark Education, and it was kind of looking at ontology, the way that you looked at your relationship with life. And I did that for many years, and it was very freeing in many ways, but it was during that time that I met my meditation teacher who introduced me to Autobiography of a Yogi. And I was living in London at the time, and I was exploring all these different ways, but I had such a low negative self-image, and the friends that were around me weren't supporting me in this growing, exploring stage. So I found it very hard to integrate the different teachings and to really ground them into my being and make definite, firm changes. And during the next few years in London, I met many different teachers that had a very high level of awakening. There was someone from Canada who he would come to a hotel in London, and you sit there and people would just ask him questions, and just sitting in his presence was very uplifting. And the second time that I visited him, it changed my whole meditation practice. I was beginning meditation, I'd learnt that, and it was a profound experience. And then I met other enlightened teachers in London that would come and visit, some that lived in the north of London that were natives, others were different teachers from around the world. And but none of them really gave me what was, I couldn't bring it into myself and make it real. And I ended up meeting a teacher who taught over here in the States, and she had had several near-death experiences, and I ended up going to a community that she wanted to begin in England, and it was a real adventure, not necessarily a good adventure. However, saying that, there were some very deep experiences, but I found that it was focusing more on the negative aspect of the psyche and what was wrong and the shadow side of things. And I ended up leaving the group and coming over to the States, and I was feeling that I was a kind of spiritual failure, that I wasn't able to integrate these teachings, and it was really my lack and just something within me that was lacking. And then while I was living in Wisconsin, where I moved to, where my dad is from, a couple of years after that, I kept getting the thought, reread Autobiography of a Yogi. And I kept getting this thought over several days, and I kept going in and looking at the orange version that I'd read when I was 22, and then the Ananda blue version, and I was kind of weighing it up, which one to listen to, which one to buy. And I ended up obviously getting Ananda's one and connecting to Ananda through this. And all of these years of experience and this this kind of just inner wanting to change and be okay with who I am and to be happy, yet feeling that I had failed in many different ways, was something that was burning within me. And I just, when I reread Autobiography, that of course our favorite strong quote is the one that Swami Sri Yukteswar mentions, and it's about vanish, the shame, let go of the shames of the past, and until you're anchored in the divine, we cannot. We have to kind of forgive ourselves for who we're being and what we're doing, and it meant something very deeply. It transformed how I looked at the spiritual path, and I connected very strongly to it, and I felt that this is something that I wanted to explore. I felt immediately through rereading that book, Yogananda was my guru, and I came to the website, I got the course in self-realization, and then there was this Swami Kriyananda person on the website, and you know, here he was this kind of aging, on this yoga path, this aging man. I was kind of expecting, you know, the autobiography of a yogi, kind of maybe a 90-year-old with a 30-year-old body, or I don't know what expectations that I had, or what was going to happen. But I couldn't quite relate to Swami. I have to say, I ended up looking at his energization exercise DVD, and I just saw him in his, he was just like, this was the cornerstone of one of the teachings, the energization exercises, and he was dressed up in a shirt and a cravat, and I couldn't tell, was he English, was he American, was he about to go for tea with the Queen, the way that he was dressed? You know, it was kind of like, I just couldn't quite figure him out, and but people were recommending read the path, and you know, you've got to read the path. So I read the path, and I started this journey on discovering and finding Swami. And in 2010, I came and visited, and I was set up to have an interview with him. But it was at a time when he was very ill. It was near Spiritual Renewal Week, and I found that I just kept deepening this relationship, so I didn't get to connect with him. But then I moved to the village last year, 2012, and I think that was such a special year for many of us throughout the world. Some people it may have been 2013, just before Swami passed. But it became a very real experience in, here is someone showing me the way to connect with the divine. He was a doorway to Yogananda. He made our spiritual path very tangible and very real. One of the first experiences of Swami at that time in 2012 was when he came to the EL temple, the Expanding Light Temple. He was coming for Sunday service. I'm sure everyone was here last year. And it was just, you know, he arrived on the Saturday, he was going to give he was going to connect with the Sunday service, he was going to come, and of course his health was causing him a challenge, then he wasn't, and he was, and he wasn't, and we were kind of in those moments of he wasn't coming, it was, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, he's here, but we all kind of really wanted to see him. And I was in Karma Yoga at that time, and then he ended up coming, and I remember Mukti being on, she was chanting that day, and it just was so uplifting. It was totally, utterly thrilling. And he came in, and of course he needed assistance to get in, came onto the stage, and here was this man with this failing body, but it was electrifying. I think you know this. I mean, it was just utterly, utterly electrifying. It was literally like the most awe-inspiring experience. He was only there for about 15 or 20 minutes. And I just remember, it was like, we didn't know what happened was the experience. And as he left and I came back and I was speaking to other people from Karma Yoga, some of those people were on the path, but many of them were not. They weren't connecting with these teachings as such. They were exploring spirituality or yoga. But everyone had just said that it was electrifying, and that what was so real for me was it didn't matter whether you were a devotee of this path, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Muslim, whether you were atheist, whatever you were, you wanted to be like that man at the front of the room that was uplifting everyone, that was exuding unconditional love, that could get us in peals of laughter in just a few sentences. It was totally about raising our consciousness, uplifting us, and inspiring us. And it stuck with me very, very deeply. And there were many, I only saw him a few times during that visit, but during that year, those few months last year, one other time that really stuck out to me, and this is really on reflection of when he, after he passed away, one of the things that I found to be most profound was when he was at Spiritual Renewal Week, Swami would come and he gave a couple of talks, and what was interesting, you know, he came in his car, and he was in his blue car, and the car would stop, and there would be hundreds of people were outside. And what was just amazing was there was an absolute tangible reverence for this man. And everybody just stood up completely silently, completely reverentially. And often Gopal would get out of the car, and then Jyotish and Devi and Swami, and Jyotish would be helping them out. And it would be utter, complete silence, but the feeling that was in the air was just this very tangible love that was undeniable to anyone. And I think it was really the culmination of what Master had set out to do when he came here, to really inspire love for God and love for the divine. That Swami had been in many of the people's lives, even though I haven't been around for that many years on this path. He had been in everybody's lives and uplifting them many years. He was counseling them personally, and through the lawsuit and through the fire and all the different challenges that came, it was just very clear that people genuinely loved this person as a divine person that hadn't changed. He was always the same, always seeing the highest good in everyone, and yet at the same time relating to them where they were and how they were. I remember we were doing the Shakespeare plays last year in honor of Swami in August, and Brannon and myself went there. We had some salad that we had to put in Swami's fridge, and we went down to his kitchen, and Narayani was there, and then Swami came out, and we were trying to fit this lettuce into the refrigerator, and Swami's kind of like, no, you don't do it like that, you got to do it like this, and he's kind of moving the whole refrigerator around, kind of like helping us put the lettuce into the right place, and he was just really relating to us at where we were and what we were doing, and just being such an uplifting friend. That was just something that I've really taken with me. And then the other thing that I just really wanted to mention with Swami was his creativity, the way that he created with the music. He was someone that could he spoke about creating music with God, with Divine Mother, that he would come up with, this is the expression of the divine that I wish to experience, and I wish to have a melody in this way. And he shared this many times, but he wasn't sharing this to say how great he was. He was sharing with us to show what we can do in our own lives. I really feel that very strongly, that we can decide to co-create with him, to co-create with Divine Mother, with Master, in a way, in any area, whether we want to create a certain vibration or a certain experience in our meditation, whether we want to experience and create something, whether we are teaching and sharing the teachings, whether our job wants to be a certain way, our relationships. He was showing us the ability to tune into creativity and to work with it in a way that Divine Mother could flow into us and through us and work with us. And he's always been uplifting us in that way. And for me now, I found that I know Swami has never asked to be on the altar, but I certainly know that his eyes that I've seen in person, that are real and have been in front of me, are a window to Yogananda. They're a window to the divine. I still am figuring out how to relate to Swami in relation to our line of gurus. But for sure, he has been the greatest friend that I've ever had, because he's shown me how to create that friendship with Master, how to live and love God in ways that are very practical and very real. And I found that even though I've been on this journey over many, many years, and it's only been really in these few years of being on this path, and particularly of meeting Swami, that I've been able to really start to be truly comfortable with who I am, with the experiences that I've had, to be able to accept that every of those challenging years as I grew up had a meaning and had a purpose, and I really feel Master and Swami were there with me. And I know Swami is there with and here for all of us now. I can imagine, of course, when he passed away, that of course there would be this incredible celebration, but Swami would of course just get straight down to work and be there supporting other people and uplifting them. And I can feel that he's there with us now, wanting us to call on him, wanting us to share his teachings, wanting us to grow spiritually and to love God in our own unique way, that is unique to us, whether we're following the path of this particular path, Ananda, or whether we have a different path. Swami was always about uplifting and just rising people's consciousness in a very powerful way. I wanted to just end with a quote from, this is taken from Swami Kriyananda as we have known him by Ashoka. This is the very last story in the book, and it's called One Last Question. A devotee was marveling at Swamiji's many accomplishments. In one lifetime you've done the work of 10 men, she said. Perhaps you're right, Swamiji said quietly. Nothing I have done is important, however, except to the extent that it has helped people individually to deepen their love for God. At the end of this life, the only thing that will matter to me is, have I been a good disciple?
Well, thank you to all the speakers tonight. Let's give them another round of applause. It's been a great joy sharing this time with all of you, and we will lead all the speakers in a blessing in a moment. I just want to share one quick thing, and won't take up much more time. But I was just thinking as I was listening to all you guys speak, and obviously being inspired by what you had to say and your experience and just the depth that you have to offer everybody. It's easy to walk into a Ananda Sunday service and walk away uplifted, but I feel so blessed that I can look at my peers for the same upliftment. So I thank you all. So let's get you back on the front row center, and we'll bless you. Stand up. And let's also include Gita and Spirit, closing our eyes and visualizing these great souls developing spiritually, deepening their attunement, and sharing that attunement with everyone. Rubbing our hands, chanting Om 3 times. I'd like to invite Naya Swami's Dhyan David Diksha to offer a few words of encouragement.
Well, I'm impressed. I wasn't expecting something so polished as we saw tonight, so thanks so much. And And Sanjan, what an excellent imitation of an English accent. Really. Just threw that in there as an extra. Very well done. But the preparation, and everybody was being yourself and connecting with everybody. You weren't just up here spouting. Very impressed with that. And the apparent joy in everyone also. I mean, if we're representing Ananda in some way, it would be good to have a little joy coming out. and I really felt that, and I thank you for letting that come through. A couple things come to mind just to think about. One of them is to really give thought to what is the takeaway I want people to have from my talk, whether I'm giving it an hour-and-a-half class or it's a 10-minute talk. What do I want them to go away with? Mm-hmm. And where do I need to talk about that? Well, how about at the end? That's really what's going to stick with people, is how you end your talk. So really, I know so many talks I've sort of kind of faded down in the bottom and I was kind of done. And that was probably the takeaway for people from the class. But how much more if I can be very clear about where I'm ending up, and it ends up like that. Because the takeaway is not information, although information is good. The takeaway is feeling. And to be able to encapsulate what you say, what you've said in your talk in a feeling way at the very end, is kind of drawing things to a close. And we saw some of that tonight, and I just want to emphasize that because that can really be a key to a successful talk. And the other key I'd just like to underline, because again we saw it here tonight, was to not just give information, not just kind of expound on a topic, but find a way, something that is really personally important to the people in your audience. Because information can be good, but when you hit on something that is, yes, this is important to me, all of a sudden they're all ears. And you have such an opportunity to offer them something, again, not just informational, but inspirational, because it is connecting with who they are and how their life is going. So I encourage you to, as you think back on tonight, or as you think into future sessions of this, really fasten on to when somebody hits you with that, something really personal that just piques your interest. I am there with this speaker. It makes such a difference. And thank you for all the work you guys put in. This is great, and as I say, I'm impressed. Ramesha.
Well, again, I really want to thank you. It's beautiful. I was very inspired. I didn't really expect to have that level of expertise from all of you. And I think what really inspired me is the combination of sharing the teaching, using a personal story, using other stories. So there's a nice flow of the whole, each of most of your talks, of not, as Dhyan was saying, not just sharing the teaching, but how I was so inspired by the way you were weaving the personal, the teachings, the impersonal. It kept me interested in what you were sharing. At this point, I don't know that there is anything else to say, because when you will know who the audience is, then of course you will have to think much more into what will inspire them. I felt that what you were talking as devotees on this path, sharing the teachings, I felt that any audience will be inspired by what you have done. But of course, you'll have to then zoom more into who the audience are. But the quality of the quality of a devotee, the heart, the mind, the knowledge, I felt it all was really weaved into what you have done. I want to say I would like you to come to, when we give training, to show people the level of what they can do. It was very, very, not just inspiring, but the integrity, the professionalism that I experienced tonight was really beyond anything I expected. So I felt very inspired myself, and I have learned a lot from each one of you. So